So, good morning and welcome to the Joint Standing Committee on Education and Cultural Affairs. We have a chock-full morning full of presentations from the Department of Education on mental health and nutrition. And this afternoon, we'll actually be in AFA for our joint hearing on the cultural affairs portion of our budget. But before we get started on the presentations, we're going to do introductions. So I'm Senator Maddie Daughtry. I represent Senate District 24, which is the communities of Brunswick, Harpswell, North Yarmouth, Freeport, and Pownell. I'll introduce my House Chair, Michael Brennan.
Hi, I'm Michael Brennan. I represent District 36, which is part of Portland.
And then Senator Rafferty.
Thank you. Joe Rafferty. I am in Senate District 34 down in York County area.
And Senator Woodsum.
Dave Woodsum, District 33, York County.
And then Representative Crockett.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Representative Ed Crockett, District 43, which is part of Portland and part of Falmouth. And if you see my still shot a lot this morning, it's because I'm toggling back and forth to another committee meeting over my left shoulder.
Representative Dodge.
Good morning, everyone. Jan Dodge, House District 97, representing Belfast, Northport, and Waldo.
Representative Lyman.
Good morning, Representative Lyman. I represent District 74, J, Livermore Falls, and part of Livermore, and I'm here in Augusta.
Representative Millett. I think you're on mute. There we go. Now you're good.
Sorry, I'm juggling too many things. Hold on. Good morning. Are we introducing ourselves?
Yes.
Great. I'm Rebecca Millett. I represent House District 30, which is most of Cape Elizabeth, and I just introduced a bill in another committee. And so I'm trying to do my job here in the Education Committee, but also make sure that my bill is progressing as I would so desire. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to 2021.
Multitasking on a weird scale. Representative Roach.
Good morning, Tim Roach, representing District 7 in Wells.
Representative Salisbury.
Good morning. I am Sue Salisbury and I represent House District 35, which is part of Westbrook.
Representative Sampson.
Good morning, live from Augusta. I'm Representative Heidi Sampson, representing the good people of House District 21, Alfred, Limerick, Shapley, Newfield, and Parsonsfield.
And Representative Stearns.
Good morning. My name is Paul Stearns. I represent House District 190, which consists of a dozen towns and the unorganized territories of Piscataquis County.
And as you heard from many of our members, it's a good reminder that many of us are on two committees or have bills in other committees. So if you see us popping in and out of the YouTube stream, it's because we're trying to deal with the ever seesaw balance of trying to, work out our life in the legislature. So, please don't think we're taking offense to any of the presentations. Just like if we're in the horseshoe, sometimes we have to step in and out of the room. Also, we were ably assisted today by our committee clerk, Sam Baker, and our OPLA analyst, Hillary Rissler. If you have any problems with the YouTube stream or some questions, please contact our committee clerk. You can find our information on our committee page on the maine.gov website as well. And with that, just a quick reminder to everyone, we are streaming live on YouTube, so don't say anything you wouldn't say to your grandmother. And with that, I think we'll get started. Sam, if you can remind me who we're letting in first.
Senator, we have Ruth Crow and Mary McClellan with the Maine Association of School Psychologists.
There we go. Good morning and welcome. Good morning. And we're ready for you to present whenever you are.
Good morning. My name is Mary McClellan, and I am the past president of the Maine Association of School Psychologists, and I am currently the National Association representative from Maine. And with me today is Ruth Kroll, who is the current president of the Maine Association. And I will start the presentation. I did share the presentation with Samuel. So hopefully you got a copy of that. If not, I can email it to you.
I have a copy of your email. I did see it this morning, so.
Okay. Let me. Okay. I don't know if you can see that.
Good to go.
Okay. If I can't see you now, so that's okay. But first of all, who are we? School psychologists are different than regular licensed psychologists in the fact that most of us in our day-to-day work are physically, sometimes remotely right now, but we're in schools. And all of our training helps us with supporting students and teachers with some of the mental health, the learning, and the behavior, because we want these kids that are in our schools to be successful. We want them to be productive members of society. So anything that we can do to help families, teachers, administrators, that's what we're here for. And this is, what do? We help students if they're having trouble learning. Why are they having trouble learning? Are we seeing some behaviors? Right now, what we're seeing in this part of this, and this goes along with the mental health, is we see an uptick in some of the anxiety levels of a lot of our students. They're having difficulty managing wearing masks, being 6 feet apart, being in hybrid model. So we're there to support them as well as teachers, because I have to tell you right now, a lot of the teachers are struggling just trying to navigate what has become the new normal. So we provide direct support, interventions, we consult with both teachers and families, and we work with the guidance counselors, the school counselors, the social workers, all in order to provide support and strategies in school for our kids to make sure that they get what they need. And that's the bottom line. We want to make sure that they get what they need. And these are some of the things that the multi-tiered system of supports, which used to be response to intervention, looks at, okay, we have a problem, how can we support it? We collect data, we look at communicating and collaborating and trying to figure out, okay, does this child need special education? But if they don't, what can we do to support them in the classroom setting? We support diverse learners. Not everyone learns the same way. And right now, some kids are struggling being on computers all day. So we need to adapt. We need to look at the curriculum. We need to look at the instruction. And this goes along with the universal design for learning and any adaptations that the kids may need. I think in some ways, the pandemic has been helpful because some of the teachers have to think outside the box, and it's not always the paper and pencil. There is speech to text, text to speech, all of those kind of accommodations and adaptations that can be made for our students so they get what they need for instruction. We want the kids to achieve academically. But in order to do that, they need to be motivated and they need to be engaged. They need to participate in their learning. They are active participants in their learning, and that's what we want. Sometimes we may need to do psychological and academic assessments. Sometimes we need to look at behavior and all of that kind of thing, their mental health. So we monitor students' progress a lot, and we collect and look at a whole lot of data, and that's kind of what we like. I know myself, I love to look at data and see that the kid is is doing well, or if they're not, what is it? Is it the particular assignment, or what is it that's interfering with their learning? We want to improve school-wide assessment and accountability. So we want to make sure that the data that we're getting and providing to other people, that it makes sense and it's useful. We're not collecting data just for the sake of collecting data. So we want to look at the outcomes, have plans in place, and all of these plans are in the districts, the buildings, classrooms, and individual levels. And this is kind of what we do with behavioral and mental health. We're there to support kids. And we looked at, and this goes along with the MTSS, the Universal Positive Behavior Supports. What is school-wide? What are they doing to help kids navigate the anxiety that a lot of them are feeling now? We have focus groups, and then we also can do individual counseling and crisis response. We are here to support both the students and the teachers. And we want to promote positive behavior and mental health. We want to improve their communication and social skills. We want to assess their emotional and behavioral needs. Is there something that we need to put into place for certain kids that to help them navigate that? Is there something that they might need if they're having difficulty in a class? Give them a pass to go somewhere where they can get help with what they might need. We have social workers that can provide individual and group counseling, and as well as the guidance counselors. But we want to reinforce positive coping skills and resilience. We want these kids to be able to function in the society that we have now. And we want to promote positive peer relationships and social problem solving. We want to help them navigate their teenage years so they can be productive adults. And we can help with referrals and coordinate community services through school. We want to strengthen the family and school partnerships. And I think this is really important. We are here for the kids, but we're also here for the families. And some families are really struggling right now. They may have lost family members due to COVID. They may have lost their jobs. They may be struggling financially. So I think school psychologists are in a unique position to help families navigate and find the help that they need so they're not struggling quite as much. And we also want to help them transition between school and community to have them have the skills that they need to have jobs, and look at what they're going to need after high school. They may need voc rehab. What else might they need? We also look to keeping the schools safe. Some of us in Maine have been trained in what they call the PREPARE model by the National Association, and looks at school crisis prevention and intervention and how we can navigate that. I know I'm going really fast, but we want to look at bullying. I know in the school that I'm in, we have the see something, say something. We have a report line, and that's all to prevent the bullying and other forms of violence, because we need to, if we don't know about it, we can't help. And so I think that's what school psychologists can help with, is trying to prevent that and put things in place and support the social emotional learning of students. We also want to improve the school climate. How can we make things better for the kids when they're here? I know right now it's difficult with the masks and the social distancing. And I know that some schools are in a hybrid model, so they only see half their friends. So it's really difficult at this time to try and navigate that. But I think this is what we do. And this is what we love to do, is just to make things a little bit better for the kids and their families so they can be happy, productive members of society. And this is the NASP practice model. And this is how most of us have been trained to look at, professional communication, counseling, organization, climate, all of that this is where our training is. And this is what makes us different from a licensed psychologist, is that we have a lot of training in the areas of academic need and MTSS. And we're also school-based for the most part. And this looks at the training that we've had and, all the different domains. It's not just testing. We're able to do a whole lot more other than the testing. And this talks about when we might be needed. Are there some learning difficulties? Are there some behavioral concerns? Attention problems. We're seeing a lot of attention problems and anxiety problems right now, just because of the screen time. Sometimes that interferes, but yet there are other kids that are thriving in that kind of environment. And sometimes right now with the hybrid model, problems at home, the kid may not want to have their screen on. How do we navigate that piece? And just fears about the world as it is now. I don't think January 6th helped anybody between the pandemic and that. I think there was the kids are scared and they're nervous. And right now, depression also, as well as the anxiety, is on the rise, just because the kids some of them don't have the social outlets that they normally had prior to COVID. So I think there's a whole lot of need right now, and this is why school psychologists are here. And this is what the Maine Association promotes, is trying to advocate for students' learning and their mental health needs on a regular basis. Ruth, did you want to take over?
Looks like she's on mute.
Okay. I can't see, so I can't help.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Love that.
Okay, sorry about that. You think I Zoom by now. One of the issues across the country is that there's a shortage of school psychologists, and that's equally true in Maine. The recommended ratio is to have one school psychologist full-time for every 500 to 700 students. And in Maine, we have one school psychologist for every 1,500 students. So, we are hoping that we can, over time, up that ratio, because when we're short-staffed with school psychologists, we're racing to keep up with testing, but we can't provide those school-wide supports, the staff supports, the family supports, that kind of thing as well. Pop up the next one, Mary. So when we look at what MASP is interested in, we're certainly interested in promoting and supporting any legislation that looks at children's mental health, that looks at providing them with coping and other skills for dealing with COVID-19 and other stressors in their lives, providing supports for the school as a unit, and as well as the staff within the schools in those areas. And any bills that are related to academic excellence or improving school-based mental health, we're happy to support. We're also happy to provide consultation if you folks are developing bills and you have questions on sort of what the data suggests that we target, or what are best practices in the field, whether it's best practices for teaching reading skills or promoting school-wide kind of positive mental health, anything along those lines. that we can help with, feel free to get in touch. And pop up the next one.
I did.
It didn't show up.
Oh,
There we go. So, and we collaborate with other organizations. We collaborate a lot with the DOE, with the special ed directors, Maine Principals Association, Maine Psychological Association, NASP, and we've also worked some with Senator King this year. So we are more than happy to collaborate because that's kind of what we specialize in is collaborating between different parties in different areas. So that's our very quick nutshell to introduce to you who we are. On the last slide, got any questions, feel free to ask, or here's contact information for myself and for Mary, as well as our website.
Thank you so much. Do you have any questions from the committee at this time? Senator Woodson, followed by Representative Millett.
Thank you, and thank you for being here.
thank you for having us.
Yeah. How many school psychologists are there in Maine? And I mean, are there a number of districts in Maine that do not have one in-house?
Yes, especially up north.
Yes, we don't have the exact number. The DOE hasn't given us that number, but we do know that the ratio is there. And in particular, yeah, northern and western rural districts are short school psychologists. But even in southern Maine, there are positions that have been unfilled for months.
Okay, thank you. And a follow-up. You concentrate on behavior, social, emotional, etc. Where does the physical aspect of a child's growth or lack of fit in?
Well, and that's the hard part. I think with each student that comes before us for various needs, there's a whole lot of bits and pieces. It may be that they're hungry. It may be that, and that's why a lot of the school districts have the free meals. It may be that they're worried about their parents or their grandparents getting sick. There's just so many pieces. Sometimes the kids act out, so we would see the behaviors, but it may be because they didn't sleep good the night before. And that's, I think, where we focus, is trying to look at the big picture, look at the child as a whole and try and figure out, okay, what is going on? And on any given day, it could be any number of things that are affecting the kids' performance in the classroom. And the teachers, I think, are keenly aware right now of all of the different needs that all of the different kids are having. And I think for a lot of teachers right now, it's pretty overwhelming. And that's when I say that a lot of times we're supporting the kids, but we're also supporting the teachers, because I've had any number of team meetings with different teachers, and there's at least one teacher that breaks down because they've reached that point.
Well, I mean, your answer doesn't, you're not, so physical needs, as far as exercise and stuff, is that a part of your?
Yeah.
That was the other piece that I was going to chime in on, is that it's been a very tough transition for kids who have been physically outside playing and active because they haven't been in school, and to transition into like the district where I work is doing a hybrid 2 days a week. So for 5 days straight, they're kind of outside playing, running around the house, doing their thing. And all of a sudden they've got to come in and spend 6 hours trying to catch up on all the academics that they've missed. And that transition back and forth has been really challenging. And part of what we do, either with individual students or with whole classes, is to look at that balance and say, so how often do they need a movement break? What kinds of movement breaks can we build in? What are some ways to, there's some kids that are just hands-on learners, and they're going to do much better with an active hands-on curriculum than a typical sort of talking language-based curriculum. And those need to be looked at carefully. And when you do a multi-tiered system for looking, instead of just saying, well, this one child has a problem because they're antsy and fidgety and won't sit still, we're going, okay, so there's 5 kids in that class with that same problem. Probably it has more to do with the way the class is set up and run. And we need to shift that to meet those students' needs.
Okay, thank you.
I say it's a good reminder to all of us that even though we're not in school, moving can help us in this environment.
Exactly.
Because I'm moving around. I had Representative Millette, followed by Senator Rafferty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple of things. First, I want to just acknowledge that Senator Daughtry and I have been struggling mightily for almost a decade now to convince our administrators to support additional recess time for our youngest children. And I will tell you that we hit the proverbial brick wall quite heavily on this particular issue. So we would love to have additional support from folks to see if maybe we can move that dial a little bit. Of course, then that gets into the whole question around, adding some more time to a school day, which, we have pretty short school days here in the U.S. and in Maine. So but anyways, that's a whole nother. I noticed that there is an advisory committee for school psychologists to the Department of Education.
Yes.
Have you folks been meeting?
Yes, I'm part of that committee, and we meet once a month, the first Friday of the month.
I'm just curious, and I know it's a pretty narrowly defined scope of duties. I'm wondering, if I would encourage you to take a look at that and see if there are ways to make it more, if there is a need, let me rephrase, if there is a need, whether there needs to be a bit of a wider scope in order to make the collaboration more robust in any way or shape or form.
We collaborate in 2 different ways. That is specifically set up through legislation, I think even at the federal level, and has more to do with kind of like certification and those pieces. But we were meeting with Erin Fraser at the DOE at least once a week starting last spring when the schools shut down. And that was more through the MASP umbrella and looking at needs, mental health needs, ways to transition instruction and those pieces. So we've had a very close relationship with the department in that respect.
Was that the case before the pandemic?
Not as much before, but this has also been a new administration coming in, and Erin sort of hit the ground running.
Say no more. Got it. And then I am ashamed to say this, but I don't seem to recall in the 279, the Essential Programs and Services funding model, whether there is a specific cost component for school psychologists versus counselors. Can you help me understand that better?
The school psychologists tend to get funded through special education. The counselors tend to get funded through the regular education. And with when IDA got revised, some 15 years ago or so, districts are allowed to use a certain percentage of that special education funding for regular education purposes. So most of the work we do is in special ed. It allows us to spend time on those prevention, school-wide intervention pieces as well.
Thank you.
I have Senator Rafferty, followed by Representative Stearns.
Thank you very much, Ms. McLennan. Ms. Crowell, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Before I get started, more phys ed time would help solve a lot of those movement issues, but I'm a little bit biased to that.
Gee, I wonder why, Joe.
We've heard a lot recently about students being, different groups of students being left behind and what can happen for students left behind. Can you folks, I'm sure you see that, obviously you mentioned that you do. Is there going to be the ability, or do you have the ability to recommend summer help for the students that you deal with? And is that something that's attainable?
I think for us, I think it depends on the district that we're in, and how much influence and how much, how much we can make that push for that, that extra summer help. Because I think right now there are groups of kids, and that's why I think having school psychologists in schools is so imperative right now, so we don't lose those kids, because there are any number of kids on any given day that are not engaged. They're up all night playing video games, and then they're sleeping in the morning, so they're not in their classes. How do we make up for that? And that's going to be a hard decision, trying to figure out all of that. I think it's going to be a long, hard conversation with each district, because I think each district is going to have to look at that. But we're here to help, and we will make whatever, we will do whatever that we can where we are. And we are working with the DOE to try and figure out how that's all going to work.
Right, because right now, through the students we serve through special education, it's an extremely narrow group that has access to any kind of summer school services and supports. There's students that you have to demonstrate have slid backwards in, over vacations in the past. And at this point, we've got a whole year's worth of students that have slid back some, but without some extra funding, most districts we work in don't have the resources for providing summer programming at this point. We do have data through the MTSS, that multi-tiered systems of support, which our current DOE is working very hard to resurrect because it hasn't been up and running for a while now. That collects the data and lets you know which students are at what level in their reading, writing, and math, which ones are making progress, which ones aren't making progress. So that data should be available in most buildings to help you target the students who need the most catch-up support.
Thank you very much.
Representative Stearns?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll lower my hand before I forget. Thank you, ladies, for being here with us. I'm wondering if your group has taken any type of formal position on whether or not the devastation that is happening to our children that you've mentioned all morning outweighs the minimal risk that they take by being physically present and able to participate in activities and live life like a kid should. Has your group taken a position on that, or are we just playing the cards that were dealt?
We haven't taken a position. It's such sort of a moving target. It's not one that we have taken a position on. We tend to look towards the National Association of School Psychologists that's got resources to look at issues like that on a larger level and to adopt the positions that they put forward. And as you know, it's one of those very delicate dances that you dance where you want to bring the kids back as quickly as you can, but you don't want to do it in a way that then shuts the schools back down again because you start spreading COVID. So how do you move those children back into school with the chance of keeping those schools open once you do? Because we don't want to create more change in their lives. We don't want to open prematurely and bring them back to school, adjust them, and then send them back home again. We want to be able to do it in a way that's going to be consistent and safe for them as we do it.
Thank you.
Gotta ask, obviously, the most important part of your role is to make, to try to find a way to navigate to make students' lives better, no matter what educational reality they're facing. But I'm wondering, I have to ask about another pet piece of legislation of mine that I don't have this session, but I've done a lot of work on late start high school for the mental well-being students. Was wondering if in your folks' professional careers, you've come across any of the science around that and seen it in any of your work, whether that's something that, you know, you view as a beneficial way to sort of combat some of the issues you're seeing with mental health. Maybe in a post-pandemic world.
I think in a post-pandemic world, I think that, you know, that would probably be something that would need to be revisited in general, because I think there is a whole lot of benefits, but there's just so many different pieces to that. It isn't just like everything these days. There's no one easy answer, because it's not a one size fits all kind of thing. So I understand that the data proves that, yes, they would benefit, because that's how their sleep pattern is that, you know, but there's, you know, there's the buses, there's the sports, there's this, there's that. So just trying to figure out all of that.
Absolutely.
And I think from my perspective, one of the things we've learned through COVID is that schools can be flexible.
Right.
And that, you know, might it be possible for some students to start at one time and some to start at another, because not all biological clocks are the same. You get the kids that are falling asleep in the afternoon, and you get the ones that take a long time to wake up in the morning. But could you offer some, you know, later online instruction or something like that for students that come in a little bit later? You know, is there any way to be flexible around some of this and to get around the busing by doing some of that remotely? I think that high schools in particular, students are able to access and make use of some of that remote instruction more effectively than the younger students. So you build in some flexibility by maintaining some of that.
I know. I think, as I said when I was talking about instruction and whatnot, there have been some good things that have come out of this pandemic. I think a lot of teachers are looking to reinvent how they do things, and they have built in the flexibility to do things not the way that you normally do. And so I think there are some good things that have come out of the pandemic, but there are a whole lot of things that are not good about the pandemic: the distancing, the masks, the hybrid learning, the remote learning. So, you know, I think we've got a lot going on right now. And I know as a group, the Maine Association of School Psychologists is here to help in whatever way that we can. And because we want what is best for the kids of Maine. And that's been our focus since day one.
I'm going to have to dive out because I've got an IEP team with some significant emotional behavioral issues that I need to go report out on, but I'll leave you, Mary, to wrap things up, and hopefully we can all be in touch later.
Thank you so much. I was going to say, I'm not seeing any further questions from the committee, so I think this is probably a good spot to thank you both for taking the time this morning and for all of your work, and good reminders as well about, you know, sometimes it's hard to see, you know, even tiny silver linings in the very difficult situation we're in now. So
right,
about the flexibility, but I just want to thank you for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having us. This is the first time we've done this, and hopefully you'll see us again at some point, but you have our contact information, and if there's anything at all that we can help support the committee on, please do not hesitate to ask us. That's what we're here for.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a great morning.
You too. Thank you.
So up next, we have the Maine Department of Education, specifically around student mental health. And we have Bear Shea joining us. I apologize. Ice just fell off our roof, so the hound dog is shaking on my feet right now. So if my laptop goes flying, that's what's going on. And good morning, Bear. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
I think we're ready.
Sorry, just getting settled.
No worries at all. The joy of trying to find a silver lining in the remote situation, as we heard in the last presentation.
There really is no amount of getting used to Zoom, no matter how long we've been doing it, right?
Agreed.
We should all be professionals. But, so my name is Bear Shea. I'm the Department of Education Mental Health and School Counselor Specialist. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and while my focus at the state is really on looking at how we are approaching mental health in schools and developing resources and supports, before coming to the DOE, I've been a private practice clinician specializing in working with youth and young adults through a trauma-focused lens. And I've also been a clinical director in public schools and a school social worker. So the state part is very new to my career, but it does really give me a focus for the clinical work and the mental health piece that has unfortunately become a really important focus of the work that we've been doing. I would like to say that, before COVID, back in those days, I was really excited to join the department in this new position, really looking at mental health, having it be something that wasn't a sort of a take that we've been able to look at before. And I think it was rather fortunate in planning for the commissioner to have my position and the other new positions that were brought in, including social emotional learning, family engagement. Those positions have really become crucial in the department's plan. And so I'm just going to really look to present some of the pieces that we've been working on over the past year, and kind of give an overall just look at mental health in general. I think for those of us, and I'm sure you'll hear a lot of it today from the groups that are presenting, mental health is a crisis that is certainly important right now. For those of us who have been doing this work for a long time, it's been in crisis in Maine for a really long time, and working with our most vulnerable populations and our youth at risk. Being able to collaborate with our other state departments, DHHS, CDC, some of our state agencies, NAMI, and then local partners has been really important in addressing this. And this has been work that we've been fortunate enough to be doing a lot of proactive steps and really build up quite a foundation of mental health work in our state before COVID. That being said, there's a sort of an unfortunate amount of research about the toll that a long-term crisis takes on human mental health. And really as a department looking at how are we taking that research approach in not just addressing what's going on right now, but really looking at planning for the effects, and knowing that this is going to have an ongoing impact. So just going to share my screen just to help me with some bullets here. So there we go. So we knew that student mental health was going to be something that would need an immediate focus in the spring. Again, knowing the research, knowing the impact that it was going to take, we wanted to make sure that we were putting things in place right off the bat. It's very clear what was going to be needed, particularly if this was an ongoing pandemic, which we had assumed it was at the time. And so really looking at direct ways that the DOE could provide free resources that were easily accessible to the field. And a lot of that started with content hours. We've reported on some of the contact hours and content sessions that have been offered. And that was across the board at the DOE. That was all of the content area specialists offering contact hours. And for myself and my team, really focusing on mental health specifically. So having a weekly group that is school counselors, school social workers, school psychologists, as well as school leadership that's interested in mental health. We know that there are a lot of areas in our state that don't have school counselors, social workers, school psychologists. And so a lot of that heavy lifting for mental health is left to other staff. So this is a weekly session that focuses on that, connects the state together, shares resources, and is something that will continue to be ongoing. Went through this last summer, and I'm sure we'll go through this summer as well. And in addition, really providing taking a lot of the expertise that we have in-house and looking at developing really specific trainings that are main focused, that are really able to look at some of the specific pieces and sort of the larger understanding and awareness of mental health, how COVID and the specific parts of it are going to impact students. But then also, what are just the best practices that we use foundationally in our education, and really looking at where we're at and where are the places that we'd like to go. And then those trainings are accessed both synchronously. So we will have several hundred educators join those trainings, and then also creating a database of all of those trainings in one place so that they can continue to be accessed and that they're constantly updated to make sure that they have correct information. And that really includes areas, on student behavior, on family engagement, on really being able to foundationally connect with students to provide them the most safety, security, and access so that their school day has the least amount of disruption. And then really going back to those relationships across the state. How are we connecting with our local groups? How are we working with schools to provide individual technical assistance while also providing some of these larger trainings? So tens of thousands of contact hours provided directly to the field for free from DOE contact. I think the other piece that was really important, was really looking at staff needs. Again, going back to the research and knowing that staff was going to be an area that was going to be impacted, that educators really have a unique experience during COVID, because not only are they experiencing all of the crisis for themselves and their families, but they also are experiencing all of that load from their students and their students' families, because educators care and know about what's going on for their students. It really is an extra weight and a unique weight that educators carry. And with that comes a unique response that is needed to address it. So, sorry. We wanted to be sure to provide trainings that were specifically for educators, not just for educators helping their students, but what actually helped educators. Looking at grief and loss, and all of the things that teachers lost last spring, band teachers not being able to connect with students, coaches, classroom teachers who really, this is a passion for us as a profession, and missing out on that is a significant part of our life. It's an important part of why we do this work, and acknowledging that there's grief and loss around that was really important. Really looking at ways of supporting self-care, looking at we created a weekly morning and afternoon check-in where staff could join, and we had hundreds of staff people from across the state joining in the morning to do some social, emotional focused and brain-based just support, sharing that information in the morning and then ending our day that way. And really looking at what are the resources that are provided and how do we build those out so that they're really bolstering our educators, knowing that they're the best way to provide that safety and security for our students while they're there. Working with DHHS, we were able to create an educator-specific side of the frontline warm line, where retired teachers got training in psychological first aid and are able to take calls from educational staff when they're struggling. It's a voice there that understands what it's like to be an educator and to experience those things. So that was a really important part of offering, and it's an ongoing support that we're providing. One of the big pieces that was actually in work before COVID, luckily, last January, the commissioner asked that we really start focusing on developing a social emotional learning curriculum that was free and easily accessible. And this was really coming out of a lot of the important task force work that we had been doing, working with the Children's Cabinet, working with the Opioid Task Force, the Trauma Informed Task Force. Social emotional learning has had 3 decades of really strong research that supports that providing a social emotional learning curriculum for youth is not only a significant prevention, but it increases academics, it increases engagement, and it improves, just sort of overall citizenship. And so the commissioner asked us to create an SEL team, statewide team. And that team consists of experts, stakeholders, members from DHHS, CDC, and that team is an ongoing entity that will continue to develop, create, and add to this curriculum. So the SEL curriculum, if you hadn't had a chance to look at it yet, I'll share that link out. It's free, which is it's unique to Maine. This is something that is owned by the DOE. It's something that we can add and edit and continue to develop. It's not a licensed product, but it's over 450 individual modules that are best practice aligned, that are trauma informed, and that are able to be accessed by teachers in the classroom, but also have a online platform element that can be used in hybrid and remote settings. It really is built to be flexible and to go into existing SEL curriculums, Second Step and other pieces that have gone across the state, as well as, the comprehensive school counseling programs and our health curriculum. So it was really important that we wanted to make sure that was there and that it was something that was going to fit in with our unique Maine needs. So just wanted to share that piece. I think also really looking at how are we addressing our mental health needs for our most vulnerable populations, ways to connect with our families and our communities, knowing that attendance and really getting bolstering that access of students being able to get their hybrid and remote learning, and also just being able to access school in person. So really looking at how we're building that, how we are reaching out for our families that have some of the largest barriers and have historically, really struggled even without a pandemic, as well as creating new ways for students and families that maybe didn't need access to mental health supports before, but that are needing them now. And so making sure that those channels are open and that the stigma is as reduced as possible. I think one of the most important pieces that happened over the spring is we noticed that the Department of Health and Human Services mandated reporting line for youth had a 50% drop when schools went into full remote. And so working with DHHS to create a campaign of awareness, talking about mandated reporting for schools, knowing that that was a significant source of safety for youth. We worked through the late spring and into the summer and brought the number back up to where it has been historically. So that was a really important way of providing that safety and security, making sure that we had policies in place for hybrid and remote mandated reporting and what that might look like, as well as confidentiality and all of these other confounding variables for the digital world. So that was an important piece, and that work continues to be ongoing. We continue to work with those partners. It's really important to have, the Maine School Counseling Association, the previous presentation from school psychologists, to be able to collaborate with NAMI Maine, to have trainings that are flexible and quick on their toes to be able to respond to the unique demands of this pandemic. So I could go on and on and on. I won't. I know I was given a small amount of time, and I certainly want to be able to take your questions. So I will end that there and be open to take your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. I have up first Representative Salisbury, followed by Representative Sampson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Shea, as a new legislator, I wonder if you could explain to me or talk a little bit about the collaboration or the work that goes on between your group and then the group we just heard from, the school psychologists. What's the difference? I know the essential difference between the roles, but your department is part of the DOE, and it sounds like they're kind of their separate entity. So how does that collaboration work?
I think, one of the important parts in mental health is that it has multiple tiers, just like our sort of our physical health system. And so there's lots of different moving parts, whether it's school psychologists, school counselors, school social workers, and then sort of all of the other pieces. Often mental health can be contracted into the school through community organizations. There's so many different facets to it, and it can be really complicated. One of the real benefits is that during the planning phase of really looking at how we were going to reopen in the fall, early on in the pandemic, all of those different groups were brought together with representatives and put side by side with our education leader groups and other stakeholders, and really looking at a plan for returning to school that incorporated all of these different parts, knowing that mental health was going to be a significant one, and making sure that that had a primary spot in that planning. And so all of those groups really being able to share their concerns, their successes. Like I said, unfortunately, there's a lot of research about this. And so we had a lot of idea going into this, knowing what we were going to need. That being said, Maine has also really struggled historically with mental health resources and looking at the negative effect on our youth for anxiety and depression. And some of those cases, that's something we already struggled with as a state, as well as just workforce and resources in the mental health arena. And so knowing some of those things, trying to be a little creative and out of the box at how we could provide those supports directly to schools, knowing that some of those things might not even be available.
Great, thank you.
Representative Sampson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nice to see you, Mr. Shea.
You as well.
So I have a two-part question. The first one is, are you aware of the status of youth beds for students, for children and young adults in the New England area, the availability of beds in hospitals for these kids?
As far as specifically for mental health?
Correct.
This has been an ongoing issue. It's something certainly when I was practicing in the field, for the past 15 years, has always been an issue. It's something that the Children's Cabinet has been working on pretty significantly far before COVID. And we know that the mental health facilities, we just have a much greater need than we have availability. And that's been an unfortunate issue in our state for quite a while.
Yeah, I think it's important for the people, the members of this committee to know, and this is something I literally just found out this past weekend, there are no beds available, and the waiting list is staggering, which leads me to my second part of my question. How do we access? What is the resource? Where do we get the most current information about the rates of suicide in our young people? I have been trying to access that information all summer long, reaching out to various organizations. So Mr. Shea, I'm wondering if you have an inside track. Where do I go? Where do we get this information? Because I think this is information that could inform us. I think it's the issue with not being able to find beds. I have had so many parents reaching out to me, absolutely frantic, and they're not just in my district, they're throughout the state of Maine. And what is going on here? We have got to, first of all, we as a committee need to be well educated on really the facts here. And it seems to me some of this information is very hard to access. So I'm open to your suggestions.
Thank you. This is certainly a topic I would love to come back and talk about specifically, and even bring in some of our DHHS and CDC peers. This is work that's been going on, as I said, for a really long time, and unfortunately, it has been dire. When I say that these mental health things have been a crisis for those of us working in this for a long time, I'm not saying that lightly. And the Children's Cabinet and other groups have really been trying to look at wait times for beds, and the unfortunate having such a significant wait to get to primary resources that by the time those are available, students and youth are in need of secondary, and sort of that degree is increasing. And that's work that we've been doing, certainly as schools are such an important hub for youth and families, making sure that we're getting those trainings and resources and supports out as much as possible. Again, that workforce, it's just some of these resources aren't even available in certain areas. And so a lot of it becomes a safety issue and a crisis planning issue, and making sure that the schools have resources for that, as well as, looking at how our local hospitals and emergency rooms are dealing with that. I know that the CDC has historically kept really good numbers on both suicide for youth 19 and under, as well as hospitalization based on suicidal ideation. That's data that exists that is really strong. And I know sometimes, those mental health data is really difficult because it's hard to attribute one specific thing. It's hard to attribute, but we can certainly look at rates, and I'm hoping those numbers are going to be coming out soon for 2020. I don't have an inside track. I wish I did. Although what I can say is, and this is what I've been planning for and working towards, is that the research really strongly states that suicide risk during a crisis isn't as significant as it is just after a crisis is starting to resolve. And usually that sort of 4 months after a crisis, when people are feeling good and everything's returning to normal, that's actually the highest risk time. And so that's something that we're planning for, while we also know, no matter what data we have, we know that this is having a negative impact on all of us, and particularly on students, and particularly those who are in already vulnerable situations. And so we're doing as much as we can right now, while also planning towards that, knowing that we're going to need more in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sorry, it was such
I
a roundabout
will want
way.
to, and I think it will be good to revisit this if this is something the committee would want to follow up on. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We have time for just one more question. Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here. My question is around those students who we know have fallen through the cracks in various areas of the state due to, in part, the lack of school counselors, psychologists, the rural situations. Can you share with the committee one or two formulas that you're sharing statewide? If you're understaffed, there are 32 kids you're worried about. What are the one or two pathways that you're recommending people follow, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Dodge. I wish it was only one or two. I think, and again, I think this speaks a lot to what the commissioner is asking for us to address, not to just have sort of an overarching policy, but really looking at the individual and unique needs of our school communities. Having districts that have an entire district with 70 students and having an entire district with 7,000 students, really making sure that the technical support that we're providing is tailored to those needs. And while the understanding and the approach to mental health and to making sure that we're building those bridges and making staff aware of students that are going to be vulnerable, that's the same. How we're doing that is really different school to school. And part of the advantage of having these weekly content hours is allowing schools, from the very, very tippy north of Maine to the very tippy south, to share information on how they're doing it, right? And that's been fantastic. I know I've talked with schools who actually appreciate the amount of attention that has been given to mental health, particularly by the legislature, and that focus that COVID has brought to something that has been a crisis for a long time. And it's really created new policies and new ways of schools to sort of think outside of the box of how we're reaching students that were vulnerable and now are even more affected, as well as students that really were doing okay and are now really struggling because of COVID. How are we making sure that those pathways are open and available? And so there's lots of different ways to think about it, but I think just the awareness is increasing, and we're really working to build the understanding and provide that free support and that easily accessible support to schools to address things both from an individual level, but then also from how their policies are affecting their ability to outreach and connect with students.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for this informative, albeit, somber update, Mr. Shea, and for all the work you're doing, and especially on the social and emotional rollout that the department's been doing. We're really grateful to have you here and to be able to work with you. So thank you.
Thanks so much. I speak with all of you.
Absolutely, and I'm sure we'll have you back. Up next, we have the Maine School Counselors Association. It does look like we're missing Kelly Weaver, but we do have Sarah and Andrew with us. So I'll let them get connected. Good morning and welcome. Good morning. And did we have Kelly Weaver joining us, or did she have to run?
Greetings. Yes, I'm Andrew O'Connell Chevenel.
She did
Sarah
have to run.
Atkins is with me today. Kelly Weaver did need to get back to teaching some classes, but Sarah and I are excited to be here. So I just want to say thank you to you, Senator Daughtry and Representative Brennan, and other distinguished members of the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee. We're excited to be here today to kind of introduce ourselves as MESCA and be able to support the work and thinking you guys are doing on the students of Maine and their mental health. So I will go ahead and share, I believe, my screen. Let me just move that out of the way. All right, can you guys see that okay, or did it kind of fall apart? Oh, great, wonderful. So let me start at the beginning for you. So we're the Maine School Counselor Association. I'm Andrew O'Connell Chevenel, otherwise known as Chev. I'm a MESCA board member and the chair of the Government Relations Committee. And with me today also is Sarah Atkins, a MESCA member, an educator, school counselor, intern, and former DOE specialist. So she has a wealth of knowledge in various parts of this education world. And Kelly Weaver, who is not able to join us today, is our MESCA chair-elect, school council of the year in 2018, and also quite impressively and excellent has created the recognized ASCA model program. It's something by our national association, and she's the currently the only school in Maine that has that status. And she's also a nationally certified teacher as school counselor. So what does MESCA do? Our mission, our vision is to support the success of all Maine students by empowering, uniting, and advocating for Maine school counselors. As I said earlier, we're associated with the American School Counselor Association. They help us, support us, provide great feedback for us to be able to support our school counselors and therefore support our students. Some of the committees that we have as an organization are our conference and professional development, which helps school counselors get resources and ideas and stay current on trends and things that they need to do their best work. We have our membership and communications committee that helps us focus on staying connected to our members in a fast and effective way. We have me and some of my other members for government relations, so being here and getting connected to you guys to kind of inform you guys about what we do and how we can help in the work that you do. And finally, our School Counselor of the Year and other awards committee that helps to recognize the work that Maine school counselors and even administrators that they do to help support students to be successful. So currently, this is a wonderful number. We serve 354 members across the state with school counselors at every level, pre-K through 12. And that's out of 624 certified school counselors in the state. And not all of those 624 are practicing. And I've recently been informed that our organization probably has one of the highest percentages of members to certified school counselors in the country. I think we're in the top 3. So that was kind of some exciting news for us as well. So what is school counseling? Yes, it's an important question for you guys as we think about today and we think about the work that you guys do in the future. So school counseling, we really try to help students in 3 main domains. One is academic. We're trying to apply academic achievement strategies for students, supporting them to be their best learners. Also managing emotions, the social emotional domain. So managing emotions and how they imply interpersonal skills, which is a huge focus for during COVID. And also, pardon me for a second. Also, another really important piece is our focus is career and college readiness. What are the post-secondary options for our students, and how are we preparing them as school counselors, as schools, to be ready for what comes after school? And I don't mean just in the afternoon. So the big thing that school counselors also do is we work to have a comprehensive school counseling program. And what does that mean? It means we're using proactive actions, measures driven by data to identify student issues, needs, and challenges, and come up with interventions that help them before things become bigger and worse. As part of that, we try to use multi-tiered systems. So tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So we do things like classroom lessons in the entire schools, or provide programming through some aspect of the school, whether it's through homerooms or roundtables or other things, to make sure that everybody's getting some piece of the school counseling that they can help them be ready for the future. And then, as I said, data-driven. Tier 2, thinking about what students need more than just the tier 1, and if that's not giving them success. Tier 3, what do they need there? Even more interventions to help them become more successful. So trying to prevent the kind of falling through the cracks, those students that quote unquote get left behind. School counselors provide an essential role in leadership in the school improvement process. We're not just a person in the office, but a part of the leadership of the schools and of our districts. We also provide short-term counseling to students to bring focus back to learning. So this doesn't mean like a long-term counseling, kind of more therapy piece, but helping students figure out what's going on for them, whether it's at home, at school, and other aspects, so that they can get their mind ready to be able to learn again. And as part of that, we often and every day collaborate with families, teachers, administrative, community resources to help build the opportunity for success for students as well, depending on, again, using that multi-tiered system. Who needs what to be their best. So it's all kind of based on this idea of advocacy for students. So whether it's through education, individual meetings, and other student-focused meetings to help them be their best and be their success. So that's kind of the school counseling piece. And then next, Ms. Adkins is going to step in and share with you about impacts of COVID-19.
Good morning, committee. Talking about the impact of COVID-19 on students from the perspective of a school counselor is tough sometimes. It's a hard conversation. So I'm glad you're listening, and I'm glad you're hearing us. Sometimes it does sound redundant of what we hear from others, and we can take that as a higher need to address these things. In the fall, Angela Avery, one of our co-chairs, as well as Bonnie Robbins, our other co-chair, put out a survey to MESCA members. And these were topics that came to mind right away about how COVID-19 is impacting our kiddos. And as you can see from this list, it kind of goes off in all different directions. We're seeing kids who are experiencing isolation, whether that's by choice. Their family is saying we want our kids to be remotely learning because they feel though their child's safer at home, or maybe isolation is a result of a school needing to go into a red status or having kids home as opposed to being at school. When it comes to engagement in school, kids are, when we think of engagement, we think they're going to log on to their remote learning, but choose not to. So that's one area we're seeing a disengagement in learning, is students not logging into their classes remotely. We're finding family dynamics because younger kids need to be home because of how the school structure is. We have older kids caring for their siblings, which is a result of maybe them not being able to be engaged in school, turning in work late, just not being able to access their education fully because they're caring for others. There's sleep disruptions, and that could be because amount of screen time is affecting how kids are being able to operate. They might find, some kids might find that they do their work at night. I've had students say that, they stay up later to do their work, so they have more screen time, so they're not getting to bed at a reasonable time. And then it spurs off into schools looking for supports in our community and not being able to find them, or there's limited availability where those supports are being maximized and kids are on waiting lists. And then some of those supports are only meeting through telehealth or virtually, and kids not wanting to access something virtually. Students also have a fear, anxiety, stress, whatever the word we want to put it as, being on a screen and being on video. So there are kids at home who are doing their lessons, but the teachers or school counselors can't see those kids on the screen because kids have that feeling, unsettling feeling of being on video. So there's lots of impacts, and as you can see from this list, it spreads out in different realms, where if we were in a normalcy of schooling, some of these could be limited or not happening at all. If you want to go on to the next slide. Oh, go back one.
There we go.
So we are seeing this impact. So things that we are doing as school counselors to help to address as best we can, recognizing individuals who are struggling, reaching out to those students, reaching out to those families, incorporating things like mindfulness and stress management into classroom lessons. We are using, all school counselors use a social emotional learning lessons and curriculum. And attendance, we are finding that students are either chronically absent. Truancy has probably kicked in the past month or so for many students, and working on what can we do to assure kids are attending. One of you mentioned in a previous presentation this morning about, does it make sense if kids are remote learning to start their classes at a later time in the morning than having to get up earlier? So all of those attendance issues, things come up, and how can we best support? So we're working to address all of these so that our students have structure, they have a connection to school, they have a connection to adults, they have connections to peers. There's a positive adult support that they can experience either virtually or when they are at school. Peer interactions we know are essential in any growth and development of all children, having healthy relationships. So no matter what we're doing, during a time of crisis or during a pandemic, all that we do, either now or ever, is so that students have all of these things in place to help them access their education and keep themselves mentally healthy. And then our last slide. So, so as MESCA, supporting school counselors, I know our MESCA numbers have gone up, and that is a result of MESCA being very proactive, being a great partner with the Maine DOE, reaching out to ASCA to see if they have free services, and because of their efforts and because of our effort to bring these resources to school counselors, that's why I know our membership's gone up. So because of this work, we have the webinars and the guided discussions that have been provided to school counselors, sometimes just for MESCA members, and sometimes they're available to all school counselors, but those are based on topics that school counselors are interested in, issues they are seeing. So we have those relevant discussions and trainings right then and there. We're doing the best we can at expanding our list of mental health resources that are available across our state, whether it's statewide, regionally, and so school counselors can access those resources and make connections. When we say school staff, it's school staff seeing a need, and then if the school staff are seeing a need for something, reaching out to school counselors. So all adults on our schools can support kids. So a wraparound approach. So it's not just the school counselor doing all those connections, but there's across the school. And as Bear Shea shared, we have every Wednesday this session that he and Bonnie Robbins host. Whatever the topic is, whatever's relevant, all school counselors and social workers across the state of Maine are welcome to that. And I've been on many of those, and sometimes I feel like there's 200-300 of us all in one place at one time, hearing the same message and same concerns from each other and helping each other out. And then he also shared that schools are using the SEL for Me curriculum, not just for school counselors to use, but again, another approach for all school staff to support our kids. And again, MESCA does this work so that students are engaged, connected, have peer interactions, positive adult support, consistency, structure, and healthy relationships. Any questions?
Thank you.
For Chev and myself.
If we can just close the screen share so I can see a little bit better. I think I have a question from Senator Woodson. Oh, you're on mute, Senator Woodson.
You see him there.
Looks like he's muted.
I'm sending you a request to unmute, Senator Woodson, so you should see an option to click on that.
Thank you. Mine didn't work. Is it? You hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. This is for Andrew, the question. You mentioned part of the school counselor's role is to advise students on post-secondary education goals.
Yes.
What obstacles are most evident in our schools that limit students' ability to pursue or prepare for careers after high school? And I'm looking at, like, at the trades, nursing, technology, non-4-year programs.
So yeah, so what are some obstacles to something kind of outside of a college idea? Is that the question?
Yes. Within the schools, it's limiting these kids.
I would take my words with a grain of salt, and I can get back to you with more information. But as school counselors, I mean, we work really hard to pay attention to, as it says, post-secondary options, and focusing not just on college, but trying to meet the needs and interests of what students kind of want for their future. So as I think you're pointing to, that college career readiness does not mean necessarily college for everybody. And we have all the vocational or CTE schools in Maine that are really helpful. On a personal level, I'm an elementary school counselor. One of the kind of projects I'm working on right now is trying to develop some career interest things for grades 4, 5, and 6 in my school, and then reach out to some of the students in those vocational aspects or in those vocational schools and adults in the community that have various jobs. And so that students are getting right now kind of an idea of what the future could look like. So I think really it's just about trying to educate that post-secondary doesn't necessarily mean college, but really kind of providing an idea or a picture of what a future can be in any of those pieces. So and that's part of our comprehensive programming as well as a school counselor. Thank you, Representative.
I congratulate you for your efforts there that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have probably time for maybe one more question. Seeing none, thank you so much, one, for all of your crucial work that you're doing in our schools and your advocacy, and also thank you for taking the time to be with us. We know it's not always easy, especially in your current role, so thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Up next, we have the National Alliance on Mental Illness, otherwise known as NAMI, and we have Greg Marley joining us. Good morning and welcome. And you are on mute. So let's see. You should be getting an invite to unmute. You're good now.
Right. So are you ready for this or?
The floor is yours.
All right, let me get going here. So good morning. My name is Greg Marley, and I'm the clinical director of NAMI Maine and the director of suicide prevention with NAMI. I've been in these roles for a number of years and have been working on providing education, training, and support to Maine schools, mostly around suicide prevention and somewhat around mental health, now for about 13 years. So I'm going to present to you quickly and hopefully leave room for your questions at the end, because there's a huge amount to cover. I've been doing a lot of training and education and support with school staff over the pandemic time. And as recently as this morning, I said, all right, I'm going to be presenting to the Education Committee of the Maine State Legislature. What do you want them to know of the impact of this time on your students? And I will weave that in at the end of this morning. So I'm going to share my screen, and I believe I have sent this to the committee as well. And so you'll be able to see that. Oops, hang on. I don't think this is happening. Let me try this again.
Wait for a split second there. Oh.
Huh.
You click on share. There we can see it now.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you should be able to, there we go.
All right, so as I said, I work for NAMI Maine, and in this role, we're really looking at the impacts of the pandemic. And every time I do a lot of presentations to school staff and community groups around the impact of the pandemic. And even if their focus is on youth or students, I want to start out with a focus on all of us, every one of us, adults and kids alike. You know, this pandemic is creating a situation where you are doing your committee meetings on Zoom. Everybody's doing everything remotely. It impacts our daily schedule, our access to food and materials, our finances, how we do our work. Right now, my wife is in the other room attending a Zoom committee meeting for the Maine State Legislature, which she's a legislature right now. Our access to our health and mental health, how we socialize, or if we socialize, if you're really concerned. So deeply, our sense of safety and our sense of hope. When we get to our students, it's exactly the same, except they have less time in grade and fewer tools sometimes to cope with it. So daily schedule and structure, access to home supports, access to peer interactions, deep uncertainty about what's coming and when is it going to come. How they access supports and other things that keep them alive and active. So their sense of safety and their sense of hope. And throughout this, we have watched as our governing body and our adults have not agreed on how to manage this pandemic. So everybody's affected. And I love this cartoon. It says, at least having anxiety made me feel special. Now everybody has it. And that is so true. If we have a base rate of anxiety that's around 20%, and I'll show you data in just a second, it's at least doubled or maybe tripled. Depression, very much the same. And it's isolation, it's uncertainty, it's fear that seem to be the drivers. For our young people, I haven't found the clear data on this, but substance use is up across the board, particularly in those students who are not well engaged with school. Some of them are drifting into regular daily substance use as a way to escape. And we're losing them as students. And the same steps that schools and communities and families have taken to protect ourselves from the pandemic increases isolation, increases anxiety. Those people who may have been anxious already, it's blown into a full-blown anxiety disorder. And for those students who are living in an unsupported family situation, right now is particularly hard. So this is baseline. So starting in 2019, around suicidality as that indicator of poor mental health, 16% of our students, high school level, reported seriously thinking about suicide in a given year. Almost 9% reported having made a suicide attempt in the past year. If we look at depression, very strong difference between females and males in the society. 41% of girls at high school level reported signs of depression, being significantly sad or hopeless for more than 2 weeks, to the degree that it stopped you from doing your usual activities. 41% of girls, 23% of boys. That's already really high compared to many states in the country. But let's talk about what the pandemic has hit. And we lack good data on school-age kids because it's harder to really do the surveys of them. But you've been using this as a proxy for high school and middle school for a while. And so this is a segment of a survey that's with adults, and it's been a rolling survey run by the US CDC throughout this period of time. And this is results of survey was finished in the end of October. And you can see the rate on the left-hand side, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, that's 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%. So those with generalized anxiety symptoms, we're talking around 40% for both females and males, a little higher in females. For moderate depression, 40 to 50% males and female. Mild depression, we're talking upwards of 70%. Sleep disturbance, between 60 and 75% for males and females. And suicidality, if you remember, seriously considered suicide, about 16% for our high schoolers. This is just under 40% for males and females. And this was a survey that was done across a lifespan, but the most strongly impacted were our 18 to 24-year-olds. And I'll show you a graph that kind of shows the differentiality in a second. So this is for males and females. This next slide is the same data broken up by 18 to 24-year-olds who were college bound, have some college, or non-college bound, with the orange being the college bound. And for me, the significant piece, very little difference in these two groups. In suicide prevention world, we know that the risk of suicide and the risk of significant issues is about twice as high in those who are non-college bound than those that are in college. And yet during this pandemic, those that are in college are struggling just like the rest of their peers for the same reasons. And I want to, people say, well, how much of this is driven by the pandemic? And these are two graphs that came out of Vox based on the CDC Household Pulse Survey. And on the left-hand side, it shows self-reported symptoms of anxiety and depression tracked by week and on the right-hand side, it shows the weekly reported cases of COVID in the summer and the fall. They're almost identical. So correlation certainly supports that this is strongly driven by pandemic fears. Again, this is adults, but if you had a base rate of anxiety and depression at about 11% a year ago, it is now, as of January of 2021, 41%. 41% of adults acknowledge significant symptoms of depression and anxiety. And if you break down those adults by their age range, you can see this 18 to 24-year-olds at 56% was so much greater than their older adults. And so if it's 56% for young adults, what is it for our adolescents and pre-adolescents? We lack that data. We have the anecdotal evidence that it's quite high. So what are the drivers? Isolation. Isolation from supports, isolation from peers. Particularly harsh if I live as a young person and try and do my schooling in a stressful or unsafe home environment. Those kids often rely on the supports and the connections they have at schools to act as buffers and protective factors. It's certainly strongly driven by uncertainty about the future and little predictability about what my short-term or long-term future looks like right now, anxiety about COVID and the pandemic, missing key milestones. We see that in our own lives as adults. How many weddings did you not see? How many funerals were you not able to attend? Graduation, prom, all the kinds of things that our kids look as little ritualistic milestones, they're missing right now. And for anybody who's got underlying vulnerabilities, either mental health conditions or trauma, this is exacerbated. I worry strongly about those kids whose families have chosen to keep them remote during this period of time. And I worry about them, and I hear about the same thing, school staff, really worried, talking to those kids who checking in with them, and they're saying, I wish I could be back at school. I miss my friends. I miss the activities. I feel so isolated. We have had several suicides in the state that seem to be clearly pointed toward the stresses of isolation. So what did I hear from the teachers this morning? They worry most of all about those kids who are drifting away, lack of engagement in remote learning, lack of internet connection, lack of supportive parents to get them engaged. And those who live in unstable families that are unstable due to financial stresses and increased substance use driven by the pandemic. So they're seeing more apathy, more lack of motivation in those kids who are seniors in high school toward filling out their FAFSA, toward making plans for the next year because they don't know what's going to happen. They lack that control, and therefore they lack hope for the future. I worry a great deal more, and I hear it from other school staff, about those special needs kids who really got a lot of additional support at school, and now some of that is lacking. Those special needs kids who are in school, and yet they're dealing with staff who are masked, and therefore they miss those facial cues. So that's kind of where I'm presenting, and I want to kind of bounce this off any questions you have. We do a great deal of suicide prevention. I was doing a virtual suicide prevention training with school staff this morning where I got that input. I do assessment trainings and a lot of coping with COVID conversations during this time. The other thing that we've offered at NAMI to try and support isolated kids, not a crisis line, but a teen text line to help break isolation and support connection. That's available for adolescents 14 through 20. So we're doing a lot of youth mental health first aid with school staff, as well as working to do sources of strength, which I'm happy to tell you about, but this will tell you a little bit about. But as to end this, I want to make sure that folks know NAMI remains a resource for anybody trying to navigate the mental health system, anybody trying to navigate the challenges of this pandemic. So that's where I'm going to stop. And if you've got questions, I would love to take them because that's where I think the meat of this can be.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your informative presentation. Do I have any questions from the committee? Seeing none, I think we're all definitely recognizing and seeing the impact of, we see it in our own lives and the impact on our work here in the legislature. And I think what's been so poignant about this morning's presentations, and particularly I think yours is a perfect bookend to what we were hearing before, is just how critical our work is to make sure that we're maintaining good mental health practices for our students and how much work we have to do. So.
And I would urge you, Senator Dottie, to make sure you're also paying attention to the impact of this time on school staff.
Absolutely.
We've had several school staff die by suicide over recent months. We've had school staff hospitalized due to stress and mental health conditions. This is really hard on them as well. And we rely on them to support our students. Absolutely, and an important reminder. Senator Woodson, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for being here, sir. Are we in a situation of, with this COVID crisis, where we could start to look at more flexibility within the school systems and allowing them to be in school more, especially say at the high school level. In other words, a 6-foot distance for teachers and one thing or another. I mean, a lot of different states have taken more proactive actions to open up the schools.
Senator Woodson, I've certainly seen some school boards who've made those changes already. Brunswick School Board made that change in about a month ago, and they've started lowering that to a 3-foot distance. I see pressure both ways. I see pushback from some parents about not wanting their students in school, and some parents who want their students in full time. It feels like during this period of time, no matter what a school does, it catches flack, so to speak. Is there room? I would love to see all our students in school, because the data we're showing is that there's not a lot of COVID transmission in schools that practice safe distancing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. And we did have a question in the chat, wondering if you could get the numbers that were in the presentation again. So I just want to remind members that we did just get the presentation emailed to us from Mr. Baker. So definitely check your inboxes. All the information should be in there. I want to thank you once again so much for this presentation and for all of the important mindful reminders of just how difficult this is. But I think it's an important reminder that there are resources out there for all of us. I think it's incumbent on us as legislators to make sure that our communities know that there's supports and make sure that we're being advocates for this type of work. Mr. Marley's also put his contact information in the chat. With that, we are running a little bit behind, so I want to thank you for your presentation. And up next, we have Full Plates, Full Potential. So we're going to get everyone in here. I think we've got everyone. Technically still good morning and welcome. And we are ready for your presentation whenever you're ready.
Good morning. It's still morning, right?
Yes.
Almost
Yep.
lunchtime. Great. All right, I'm going to share my screen if I can.
Should be able to. And perfect.
Okay, great.
Full screen for some reason. We seem to be seeing sort of like the presenter with the next slide.
Oh, let me switch. Let's see.
Yeah, I think we had swap displays up at the top. Right above.
Here, I'm just going to stop and restart. Sorry for the delay. All right, how's that? Is that better?
There you go.
Okay, great. Technology is so fun.
Exactly.
All right. Well, good morning, Senator Daughtry, Representative Brennan, and esteemed members of the Joint Standing Committee on Education and Cultural Affairs. My name is Anna Corson. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Community Partnerships with Full Plates, Full Potential. And I'm joined by our newly hired Executive Director, Justin Strasburger. I know he's on here as well. And we really appreciate the opportunity to discuss child food insecurity in Maine and the incredible response we've seen from schools during this pandemic. So Full Plates is a statewide nonprofit. We are on a mission to end child hunger in Maine by maximizing participation in USDA child nutrition programs like school breakfast and lunch, after school meals, and summer meals. All of our work is done in collaboration with partner organizations and associations in Maine and across the country, the Maine Department of Education, and school districts statewide. And I know you'll be hearing from our partner Walter at DOE a little bit later, as well as Good Shepherd Food Bank. During this public health crisis, school meals have become even more important in addressing food insecurity across our state. So before the pandemic hit, around 80,000 students were eligible for free school meals. But due to the limitations of the current method of collecting family income data through school meal benefit applications, the restrictive USDA income guidelines, and the deep stigma associated with living in poverty and needing assistance, the school meal eligibility rate never fully captures the need. And this is true across the country as well. This school year, it has been especially challenging to get families to return applications as all meals are free to all students. And actually earlier this fall, Maine Department of Ed reported a gap of 17,000 missing applications from children who were previously eligible for free and reduced meals during the 2019-2020 school year. And due to families experiencing economic hardship during COVID, statewide eligibility for school meals and the number of children experiencing food insecurity is projected to increase. Feeding America is projecting food insecurity, children experiencing food insecurity across the state to increase by about 40%. We have certainly heard of increasing need across the state from school nutrition directors in the field. Down in York, when the York Public Schools switched to virtual learning back in the spring, they set up some school meal pickup sites, and they expected about 10 kids to show up because they have a pretty low rate of free and reduced eligibility. Only about 8% of their students are eligible for free and reduced meals. The first day they were open, they fed about 50 students, and then participation continued to grow to over 400 students participating daily. And that's one of our more affluent communities in the state, as you all know. And then island communities like Deer Isle, Stonington, they saw a 75% increase in meals served over the course of the spring and summer. And experts are projecting that it will take about a decade to get back to pre-pandemic levels of economic stability and food security. And just a note that before the pandemic, Maine did have the highest rate of children experiencing food insecurity in New England. So in addition to an increase in need, we have seen an increase in barriers to food access for children, resulting in a drop in school meal participation statewide. In the spring, when school buses and staff were available to help with school meal service, many of these barriers to access were eliminated as meals could be delivered to kids at home. And now that schools have reopened, which is good, we want kids to be in school, many students are actually lacking access to school meals on a daily basis as a result of hybrid schedules and remote learning, despite valiant efforts by schools to try to reach students at home and at school. And this is because buses are tied up transporting students, so many schools have had to stop deliveries, and instead they're relying on families to pick up meals at meal pickup sites, or they're trying to send meals home with kids. When families lack transportation or parent work schedules can get in the way of students accessing meals. And in addition, we're hearing reports from middle and high schools that teens are just not eating even when they're in school due to stigma and concerns over food safety. So school nutrition programs have faced many challenges and have had to overcome multiple barriers to get food to children at home and at school. The cost of food, packaging, PPE, and increased staffing costs have all created financial strain on school nutrition budgets. Many districts lack delivery vehicles, and as I mentioned before, meal participation has dropped with fewer students in school due to remote learning and hybrid schedules, and that leads to lost revenue for those school nutrition departments. But the state's response of allocating CARES funding to districts and those funds being dedicated to school nutrition programs, or a portion of those funds, has been critical in addressing these challenges. And to support school meal service and to address some of these financial and logistical challenges, we launched our emergency fund as soon as schools went virtual back in mid-March. We've given out over $1.4 million to schools statewide over the last 11 months. And this funding has helped with increasing costs and logistical challenges, such as what I mentioned before, really basic things like packaging, food costs, equipment, meal delivery, PPE, and staffing. And in response to the pandemic, the USDA and Maine Department of Education have removed a lot of red tape and barriers to streamline school meal service and to increase food access for kids. So they've allowed universal free school meals for all students, the flexibility around where and when meals are served and consumed by children. And the Maine Department of Education worked with Maine Department of Health and Human Services to launch the Pandemic EBT program, which supports families that are eligible for school meals to get additional benefits to purchase groceries. And we've heard from families across the state and across the country that they actually felt an increase in food security resulting from pandemic EBT. So that program has been really important. So we've certainly seen that this pandemic has shown a spotlight on the high rate of childhood food insecurity in Maine and the critical role schools play in mitigating hunger for children statewide. We've learned a lot during these challenging times. We've learned that anytime that a food insecure child is out of school, not just during a pandemic or national disaster, but also after school, on weekends, vacations, and during the summer, and also on snow days, means less access to basic nutrition. We've learned that providing schools with the infrastructure, support, and flexibility they need to feed children outside of school helps children to reach the critical meals that they really need. We've learned also that universal free school meals removes unnecessary barriers to food access and allows school nutrition programs to focus on feeding kids, not collecting lunch money. So looking forward, what can we do to support food access for Maine's children? We certainly can't go back to the way we fed kids before the pandemic, expecting some to pay for meals while others get meals for free. The old system furthers stigma and creates inequity in our schools. We need to adopt policies that streamline school meal service, increase food access in and out of school, and also increases equity in our schools. We need to support schools to continue the best practice of serving breakfast in the classroom and also using other alternative breakfast models. We've seen an uptick in this due to COVID because it's safer to feed kids in smaller groups in the classroom. And this is proven to increase participation in school breakfast. We need to ensure that schools and communities have the resources and infrastructure to increase food access for Maine kids. And we need to ensure that Maine Department of Health and Human Services, the Maine Department of Education, and Maine schools have the resources and support they need to reach all eligible families in the upcoming second rollout of pandemic EBT. So thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions. I'll stop my screen sharing.
Thank you very much, Ms. Corson. We appreciate your presentation and the work of Full Plates. And at this point, I see Representative Millette has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Anna. Great to see you.
Good
morning. There was a recent report on Maine Public about how the actual uptake of our food programs has precipitously dropped. And I'm wondering what is Full Plate's perspective on this issue?
Yeah, so unfortunately, while we know that the need is increasing, the challenges that I was mentioning before have really resulted in a drop in meal participation. So I think the biggest challenge is that there are just fewer children present in school on a given day. That is a combination of the virtual hybrid schedules and then also just the general drop in enrollment that we're seeing across the state due to COVID. We are working with schools on how they can outreach to families and really market the fact that meals are free and that they're for everyone. I think one concern we've heard from parents and from students is, if they take a meal, is that going to take a meal away from someone else? And the reality is that the meals are for everyone, and the more students that participate in meals, the more support there is for the meal, the school nutrition program. So, the more participation, the more federal reimbursements coming back into the state to support that program. So we are certainly concerned, and we're also trying to support schools to continue to deliver meals to children where they are, which is a big challenge. Vehicles are expensive and you need staff to staff those vehicles. It can be very difficult for a nonprofit to pay for staff time. So while we have done a little bit of that during COVID, it's not seen as sustainable. And so that can be a challenge for the district to accept that funding to pay for staff.
Thank you. Now I have Representative Salisbury.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And it's nice to meet you, Ms. Corson. Thank you very much. Food insecurity is a a topic near and dear to my heart, and free breakfast and lunch for all students is, I think, should be a number one priority for all of us. I do some work with food insecurity in my community of Westbrook, and something that I've heard several times from people is we have a large percentage of new Mainers, and some of their concerns are because they're not supposed to be a burden on their community. Some of them are afraid to fill out the applications for the free and reduced lunch. Therefore potentially missing an opportunity. I know now it's not as much because we're doing the free breakfast and lunch, but how is that, what is the impact of that on some of these numbers, do you think?
We have certainly heard, and this was an issue before COVID in other districts like Portland and Biddeford and Lewiston with large populations of new Americans, that they're concerned because of some policies around new Americans and immigration in our country, that if they fill out an application, that will put their family at risk and their community at risk. So I think that that's been an ongoing issue. I know with programs like the National School Lunch Program and Pandemic EBT that it is for everyone, regardless of your immigration status. So that's an important part of marketing. And so one piece that we've kind of seen that's lacking in all of this is just having adequate resources to do a really good job of reaching out to families and doing that in a way that we're reaching everyone across the state in a general way, but also targeting certain communities that need to hear a very specific message. So that is and should be a priority.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for your question.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, Anna, thank you very much, and thank you, Full Plates, and thank you for being here.
Thank you all for your time and your support. We appreciate it.
Great. We will now go to Walter Beasley and the Department of Education. So Sam, if you would allow Mr. Beasley in. Mr. Beasley, good morning. Or it is still more, well, it just got to afternoon. So thank you very much for being here. And if you just quickly introduce yourself, and we can start with your presentation. You're still on mute.
Hey, this is Walter Beasley, Maine Department of Education Child Nutrition Programs. I've been here for 30 plus years, so I've seen quite a bit over the time. So what I want to do is I'm going to go through my presentation, and I'm going to try to keep it fast in 10 minutes, be respectful of your time. So I'm not sure if you're seeing the right screen, but that's all right. I'm going to move on anyway. So like I said, I'm Walter Beasley, Department of Education. We have 15 people over here that work for us. We're located on the east side of the river on the MI complex, and we have several programs that we monitor. Child adult care, the school lunch program, the summer program, and other programs, but I don't want to dwell on that. So right now, Maine has received over 70 federal waivers to operate the way we're operating now. And I want to stress the fact we're not operating the school lunch program. We're operating under the summer program. And with the decrease in meals, we're now calling it the complementary emergency meals. So we want to eliminate that fear that they're taking school lunch or wherever it might be. The school lunch program is not a poverty program. Every meal gets reimbursed, but just to make sure children get their meals, we wanted to change the name, just make it a little more friendly to them. So we're calling it complementary emergency meals, and it's available to any child 0 to 18. No questions asked, no sign up. You just show up and get a meal. Some school districts are saying, call ahead so we can get a number or a count. So it gives them an idea of how many meals they're preparing to be served in remote locations. So some of the waivers we got, the mealtime flexibility means we can serve breakfast at noontime, we can serve breakfast in the afternoon, we can serve breakfast in the morning. And what that allows us to do is do a takeout breakfast. It allows us to serve lunch and breakfast at the same time. It allows us to serve 3 or 4 breakfasts at the same time, 3 or 4 lunches at the same time. So it gives us a lot more flexibility. Some schools are doing it by day, 2 or 3 days. And then we have another process called bulk, which means instead of making 5 sandwiches for 5 days, they put in a loaf of bread. They put in enough ham and cheese so they can make their own sandwiches. And what this does, it improves the quality of the meal. It's less packaging. The downside is it means somebody has to make the sandwiches where it's served. And we've heard about that as well. So it is a concern both ways. The other thing we got was non-congregate feeding, which means you can do takeout meals. You don't have to eat the meal on site. You can take it off site. You don't have to be in a group, which is kind of what you really had to do anyway. Typically in the summer program, you have to serve the meals and the children have to eat it on site. So that's changed. The other thing that's changed is site eligibility flexibility. In order to participate in the summer program, the site has to be more than 50% free and reduced. With this waiver here, every site in Maine can potentially be a site. The condition is the local school district has to have a plan on how they picked each site. And the plan they develop, they keep, they maintain. And basically, they just have to show they picked this site because there's a severe need area, there's unemployed area, or it could be a number of other things. So that's the 3 big waivers that we got that really are important. Normally, we get 2 waivers a year. And like I said, we're up to like 76 waivers right now. So it's a big change. And again, we're operating under the summer program. It's takeout meals. We did get some Maine-specific waivers. We've asked for more than we got approved for. And the reason we didn't get approved for some is they came through as a federal waiver instead of a state of Maine waiver. So like the site eligibility waiver is specific to the state of Maine. So that's how we worked with that. Participation, there's a lot of talk about participation. Is it going up? Is it going down? So in the spring, we were doing about 1.3 million lunches statewide per month. In the summer, and the summer is defined as mid-June to mid-August. We did 1.1 million lunches. I'm only talking lunches. You can add quite a bit more, almost double in some cases for the breakfast program. I'm just talking lunches so we can compare. In the fall, with all the confusion, are we hybrid? Are we not hybrid? What's USDA going to let us do? What's the state going to let us do? What's CDC? With all that confusion, we still average 1 million lunches a month. And we're currently at still 1 million lunches per month, give or take a little bit. It seems to be going up a little bit. January, we don't have the final numbers, but it appears to be a little bit higher than the previous months. And the thing about the program, this complimentary emergency meals, is they are not just 5 days a week. They can serve them 7 days a week. They can serve weekends, and they can serve on holidays. If we were doing school lunch, it would have to be only educational days. So you can see that it's a really a big benefit to the children to do this as well. It's really underutilized across the state. We have some school districts that are doing increase, they're doing great. Some that are flat, and then we do have some that have lost sales and lost participation. The food safety piece has come up now and then. I've talked to students and teachers. It's interesting what their input is. Some are saying the same thing Ann was telling you, that they don't want to take the meal away from somebody else. The food safety is perfectly safe. And so it's interesting what the students say, lack of choice. But the other thing we got to think about on participation is how much can these kids actually carry home? You know, if they go on hybrid the next day, they got to take their books home, they got papers home. Now you got to take a meal home. So we really have to keep being flexible and think about different ways to help these parents and these students get their meals. So what they're doing, you know, we have mobile routes out there, which it could be a van, it could be a bus, going to corners and dropping meals off to kids that are there. It could be going house to house. There's a number of things they're doing with the mobile routes out there. We did see a change in a lot of mobile routes when school went back in session. Buses became, a limited issue. Bus drivers are an issue. So all that had to be taken in consideration as well. We've encouraged them to use volunteers when possible. There's no reason why they can't use volunteers. We do encourage them, if they use volunteers, to put a seasoned food service staff with them, just to make sure that they follow any regulations they have, food safety, sanitation, and a number of things like that. We still have to keep track of how many meals are offered and how many meals are taken, just so we can claim those through the federal government. Pickup locations, we have locations that could be at a city hall, that could be in a library, they could be in front of the local grocery store, where a vehicle will show up and sit there and wait for students to come get their meals. Children take their meals and off they go. And this sometimes is a problem because Monday, when they're homeschooling and mom and dad are remote working as well, they can't go up and leave work to go down and pick up meals. So some schools have started doing it like at 5 o'clock at night. As the parents are commuting home, they can swing by and pick up meals. Some are doing late Sunday afternoon. So they're trying different things out there. And unfortunately, there's no silver bullet across the state. Every district's a little different. When you're driving a bus in Charlotte, Maine and in Kittery, Maine, there's two different things altogether. So you have to take that into consideration. Some meals are still being served at school. The hybrid is serving meals. Maybe you serve breakfast and they take lunch home. Maybe they take breakfast home the day before and they eat it in the home the next day. So there's a lot of different variations on this as well. It could be take 1 meal home, 3 meals home. There's all kinds of different things out there that they can do. And we encourage as much flexibility as they can. The bulk does give them good quality. And we want to make sure, our focus is to give them a good quality meal, not only just to give them food, but we want to make sure they give them some good food. Some of the key things that really are important, communication is essential. And it really showed a lot during this COVID opportunity because schools want to know what's going on. Parents want to know what's going on. So we just started doing a number of things. We started WWW, which is Walter's Wednesday webinars. So every Wednesday I would do a webinar for anyone that wants to sit in it. Could be a superintendent, business manager, food service director. We have some outside hunger agencies that sit on and listen to our webinars. But that was the first thing we started doing just to keep them informed, because when these waivers were coming in, they were coming in fast, very fast. I mean, in 2 cases, one case, I was just about to start the webinar and I got an email saying something had changed. So we went in and had to change the webinar. In another case, in the middle of the webinar, I got a text from one of my employees, says, Walter, stop, they just changed this. So on the fly, we changed sometimes just to make sure we stay current. And sometimes this is really critical to do. Weekly presentations, we've done all kinds of things in the kitchen here, to how to prepare food to take home, different ideas. We have open office hours. We have a really good relationship, I feel, with this community out there. They call in, ask us questions. They not shy to do that. When this thing first started in March, with no exaggeration, I had everything that could possibly happen as far as contact. I had emails, I had phone calls, both on my home phone and my work cell phone. I actually had someone show up at the door, which, great if I can help them. It was great. My staff jumped on Saturday morning without even asking them and started answering their questions, getting them going. So when we found out this Saturday morning, by Tuesday, we had switched over a little bit less than 200 school districts from the school lunch program to the summer food service program. And only about 70 of those districts even knew how to do a summer program, but they all switched within 3 days. So you're talking about some amazing people. And I do have to say, you see these ladies and gentlemen wearing aprons in the kitchen. That is only their cape on backwards, because they really are superheroes for what they're doing out there. So they really doing some great things. We have a web page that lists our resources. We have a web page that lists the videos and clips that we've given to them. We're doing our clips now in like 12-minute or 15-minute sections, so they're not sitting down and listening to an hour presentations, kind of like we're doing now, just something quick and easy. Different tips we do, menu distribution, anything we can do to help them. I meet with USDA 2 to 3 times a week. I meet with MEMR at least weekly, sometimes twice a week. The Child Nutrition Listserv goes out every Thursday, and it's interesting. You think they're not reading this stuff, and you skip it one week for whatever reason, a holiday, and the next day they're emailing you, what happened to Thursday update? I missed it. So they really are reading this stuff. They really want to know what's going on because changes happen so fast. But the other thing I want to mention is the food service department in the schools is really part of the community, and they're working with the community as well. We work with MEMR, CDC, DHS. We have hunger partners out there that are great, helping us a lot. You just heard from Full Plates Full Potential. I work with the State Chamber of Commerce. It's just unlimited the number of people that are willing to help and supply volunteers to us. The other thing that we find really important is to be friendly with the restaurants and the other half the food service industry. Restaurants aren't operating like they were. And some of the product that they used in their restaurants is sitting someplace in a warehouse. And a good example of this is the fishing industry. The state of Maine and Department of Education is working with the Maine fishermen in Portland. And what we're doing there is they are donating fish to the schools. And it was supposed to be a 6-week program. We're on week 21. And we've got over 7,000 pounds of fish donated to the schools. 6,000 pounds went to schools, and then another 1,300 pounds went to the child adult care program, which is daycare centers for the younger children. We work with them a lot, and they've only been on board for 5 weeks. So they've already used 1,300 pounds of fish. And when we do something like that, we have to teach them how you handle the fish, how you store it, and then later on how you prep it, because whatever we do for either fish or it's a vegetable out of a farmer's garden or where it might be, we got to teach them how to prepare that and serve it so when the students or child eats that, they have a good experience. We don't want them to have a piece of fish and that's all, this is yucky. Then it's done, it's over. So we really want to be important that this stuff is served. And the products, the fish, for example, some of the popular ones I've seen in school is the fish tacos. I've also seen the baked fish, which is very popular, and then a lot of chowder. So we were worried that kids would not want to accept this fish, but it's going very good. We have a number of chefs in schools that have prepared it in many different ways. So that's really doing a wonderful thing. So I'm going through this rather fast. I'd love to share more in more detail, but what's going to happen in the future? Everybody want to know what's going to happen in Walter. So what I'm showing you here is the crystal bowl, which I introduced to the school food service program. They always want to know what happened. And I told them I didn't have a crystal ball, but I have a crystal bowl. So I use a crystal bowl for projections. I have no idea what USDA is planning. I know they're doing a lot of discussion about the waivers currently. We will continue working with the fishermen as long as they allow us to. We work with Harvest of the Month program, which we feature a main product. Every month we send out posters, stickers, recipes, and anything else we're trying to continue that. We're trying to continue as much stability for the schools and the children as we can. The two important things are food and shelter. We are food. We want to make sure we're doing the best we can. And we're also the biggest restaurant in the town. So we're trying to do good support for the community, best thing for the children, et cetera, et cetera. So, I'm kind of worried in the future a little bit. Right now, we're serving all these complimentary meals and no one has to pay anything. When these students do come back and we lose our waivers, then we're going to start charging students again for meals. And I'm kind of concerned that the students, we're going to lose students because of that change And the other thing is we're going to lose the application piece for our program and many other programs. I think it's going to take a big effect. You know, in Maine, we don't refuse any kid a meal. We give every child a meal that asks for it. So I'm kind of concerned what the future is going to hold for that. So again, I know I went through this fast and want to respect your time. And, you know, we're talking about meals, and we're talking about mealtime at the same time here. So like I said, we do culinary classroom, we got the summer programs, we got child health care, school lunch program. We have a bunch of programs under us, USDA Food, and we put a lot of stress on these ladies and gentlemen during this chance of opportunity. And we're looking forward to making some changes in the future to our program, and we're to learn from this opportunity, and we will come out as a better and a stronger program. My email address is state of Maine address, walter.beasley@maine.gov. Feel free to contact me, send them through Sam or Chelsea in our office, wherever it takes, but I'm more than willing to answer any questions that I can help or explain. It's a pretty complex program, as you know. So I'm going to stop talking and turn it over back to you.
Thank you, Mr. B. Oh,
Go ahead. Maddie, you're back. Okay. Go ahead.
I just want to thank you for your presentation and also see if the committee has any questions. Seeing none, I think the problem with having the student nutrition portion right before lunch is we're all starting to think about
Yes, I agree.
Absolutely. I do want to say I'm really excited to hear about the fish partnership and being able to bring the local products into our schools. We know firsthand, you know, that's a passion of mine that, you know, if students are introduced to our locally grown products and how to prepare them in our schools, that sets up a lifelong habit of eating and nutrition that, you know, you really can't replicate in any other way. So really excited to hear about that.
Yeah. I'd have to thank the education committee because they gave me a position that all she does is talk to local farmers and fishermen. And that's why this program is so successful.
That's wonderful. Music to my ears.
Yeah, yeah. And she's a chef, so she teaches them how to use it too.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Beasley, for your time today. I'm sure we'll be seeing you again soon. Just to let the committee know, just because we are coming up against lunch, we do have one presentation left. We have the Good Shepherd Food Bank joining us. So I'm going to let them in real quick. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think we've got everyone from Good Shepherd joining us. And I'm going to let everyone get connected. I see Ms. Gallant is still connecting to audio. But once everyone's present, we are ready for you folks to take it away.
Sorry, bear with me for 1 second. Okay, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Perfect. Hi, Senator Daughtry, Representative Brennan, and members of the committee. Thank you so much for having us today. My name is Jessica Gilday, and I'm joined by my colleagues Aoife Dowd and Amy Gallant. We manage youth and family initiatives at Good Shepherd Food Bank. I'm sure that many of you have heard the statistics of hunger in Maine by now. Over the past 10 years, 12% of our neighbors and 1 in every 5 children have been experiencing food insecurity. Now, because of the deepening economic impacts of COVID-19, these numbers are projected to rise by as much as 25% and to an even greater degree for children. Good Shepherd Food Bank works with over 500 partners across the state to provide access to over 27 million meals for our neighbors every year. Through youth and family initiatives, we work with over 200 early childhood centers, public schools, after-school programs, and higher ed institutions to provide easy, consistent access to nutritious food for students and their families. Our school partners not only serve as food access points in vulnerable areas, but as vital community resource hubs where families feel welcomed, supported, and safe. Over half of the families that access grocery items and produce through their schools do not visit other community-based food programs. This means that these are essential opportunities for us to reach families who don't connect with other resources. I'm going to turn it over to Aoife, our school initiatives coordinator, to go over our COVID impact.
Thank you.
So the biggest thing that we've really learned in the wake of the pandemic is how resilient our incredible school partners are. Over 90% of our school programs remained operational in some capacity during the closures in the spring, and nearly almost all of our partners today are operational. In March, demand for our school pantry skyrocketed. To give some context to that, in the 2018-2019 school year, so pre-COVID times, our programs reached just over 7,000 families. At the beginning of the pandemic in the spring, that number soared to 19,000 families. During the 18-19 school year, our partners distributed about 1.2 million pounds of food, and this year we're on track to hit 3 million. So this level of scale and growth is really unprecedented for us and for our partners. In March, when buildings started to close, our partners really didn't miss a beat. To keep families safe, they pivoted to low-touch and drive-through distribution models, including those that worked with transportation departments to deliver groceries alongside with school lunches using school buses and hosting all day long socially distanced food distributions. Many of our Head Start sites and partners expanded from just 1 to 2 pilot sites to countywide initiatives that are reaching hundreds of families just within a matter of weeks. This continued level of service is really unique to Maine and to our partners here across the Feeding America network. Our colleagues at other food banks have seen their school programs shutter or have moved to direct distribution. So really speaks to the resilience of our Maine partners specifically. So for us, one of the most remarkable stories that's really emerged during the early days of the pandemic was at our partner in MSAD 54 in Skowhegan. So the two coordinators there, Chelsea and Stephanie, one working at the elementary school and one working at the high school, found that when school closures began, they needed to quickly mobilize and they began to pack and distribute bags to families at home, and they quickly expanded to distribute that district-wide. They worked with local partners, Pleasant River Lumber Company, to get access to a tractor trailer, which they drove from Skowhegan to our warehouse in Hamden every other week. And with the help of community first responders, everyone from teachers to EMS to fire department, park rangers, and game wardens, they all took turns loading teachers' cars and delivering boxes directly to over 700 children's homes every single week. Prior to the pandemic, this was a really strong program, but they only served about 65 families every month. So a really huge increase in the amount of work that they were doing. In addition to the work that they did with the schools and the families there, Chelsea and Stephanie also worked with area towns that had no established food pantries, and they established pop-up food access points in town offices in Canaan, Norwich Walk, Smithfield, and Mercer to greater meet the needs of the community. This story really demonstrates the incredible dedication and tireless work of our school partners, who in addition to managing these programs are also managing their full-time jobs as teachers, social workers, nutrition staff, and administrators. And so really, in spite of all of these challenges, our schools remain remarkably resilient. We're incredibly thankful for their work. So I'll hand it back to Jess to talk a little bit about where things are now.
So the first half of this school year, demand has remained elevated. The biggest challenges facing our schools are limitations on volunteer support, putting an increased pressure on school staff to operate their programs independently, and limited capacity due to the increased responsibilities of managing hybrid and remote learning scenarios. We are also concerned about families who've chosen to unenroll their children due to health concerns. School enrollment is down about 4% this year, which is about 8,000 students. When families unenroll, they lose access to both school meals and most school-based food access programs. We're concerned that because many of these families opted to unenroll due to health concerns, there may actually be increased vulnerability across this population than in years past. The pandemic has also brought to light for us how vital it is that we support and invest in all of our communities. Since May of 2020, we've invested over $400,000 through a newly created grant program to support efforts around the state to increase access to culturally relevant foods to families in need. Funds from this program have supported the distribution of boxes to New Mainer families isolating due to COVID-19 exposure, shop credits at local immigrant-owned groceries for families in the Portland public school system, after-school meals made with traditional foods in Wabanaki communities, and welcome boxes for guest workers and their families who are arriving in Washington County for the blueberry picking season. Addressing the impact that the pandemic continues to have on Maine's children will require solutions at the local, state, and federal levels. The food bank works closely with our members of Congress to ensure federal support for nutrition programs in the COVID relief bills, and we work with the DOE, other advocates, and the state legislature to support state solutions. This committee will be considering a number of bills this session that can help alleviate hunger in our schools. We encourage you to continue to support best practices such as breakfast in the classroom, universal free school meals, and increased food access during the summer and when kids are out of school. As Anna mentioned earlier, flexibility in meal programs while kids are not in the school building has proven critical in meeting the need and reaching as many children as possible during the pandemic. The state is currently working with the federal government to extend the pandemic EBT program, which adds the value of school meals to families' monthly SNAP allocation. And the state is also working on redirecting surplus food that is sitting in school freezers through donations to local food pantries or families. Amy Gallant is here to answer any specific questions about legislation and our federal work. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much. Do you have any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much, not only for your work and your advocacy, but everything you're doing. And as we said in the prior presentation, I feel kind of bad having the nutrition and food access right before lunch, because I think that's what we're coming up again. But, you know, we look forward to working with all of you, and thank you for taking the time to be with us this afternoon, officially afternoon.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Seeing any further questions on anything before we break for lunch, committee? Sam.
Just a reminder that we're all switching over to AFA for this afternoon. So I'll be closing this Zoom and it'll be done. And then if you can't find the AFA committee invite, just call me or email me and I'll make sure you have it for 1 o'clock.
Thank you so much. See you all.
And I just received and forwarded to the committee all the testimony for this afternoon, with one exception that needs to be resubmitted. So check your email for that testimony.
Thank you so much. Well, let us know if you have any questions, and if not, we'll see you all over in appropriations.
Like he said. Mike.